Now, today we are going to start chapter 12 of class 10 CBSE, which is area related to circle. So, we will discuss from basic to advanced. That means I'm assuming you may not have the basic understanding of what is circle, radius, chord, sector, segment. Everything we'll discuss here because this is the base. If you do not have idea about these concepts, you will not be able to understand the question. And then if you don't understand the question, your brain will not be able to think what should be the right solution. So make sure you watch it carefully and try to understand it and then memorize the concept. So our first topic that you want to discuss or you want to start with is what is circle? Because if you want to understand the areas of circles, first we should have the basic understanding of circle. So I'm assuming the moment I say the word circle, you may be able to think this figure because we have studied it in the junior classes. So this is the figure that comes to our brain. Now let's extend our knowledge. How can we define this figure? Like what is the basic understanding that we have to develop and how can we define that what is circle? So now let me change the boundaries of this. So instead of this one complete curve, I have made these different points here. So one thing we can understand here that what is the circle? Now it looks like it's the collection of points. Now, what is so special about these points? So let me make one more point here, and then it will be more clear. If I make one point, let me make it bigger. Let's say this. I'm just trying to get it as. Let's say this is. So this is one more point that we have. Now, what we are doing is we are making sure that this point is fixed. We are fixing this point, so this does not move. This point is fixed. So let me write it that this is the fixed point that we have. And now what we are trying to understand is the fixed point. Fixed. So this is our fixed point. And now what is happening here is from this fixed point, if we will calculate the distance of these points, like any point here, the distance will be same. For example, from here, if I take any distance, let's say from this fixed point, and if I take any point, and let's say if I calculate this distance, so whatever distance we have here, now if I want to calculate another distance from the same fixed point, but now I change the point. So let's say I take this point now. So whatever distance we have here from this point to this fixed point and from another point on the circle to this fixed point, these two distances will be same. So what I want to say is if this distance is 2 centimeter, this will also be 2 centimeter. So how do we define it? How do we get the proper definition of circle? So what a circle is? Circle is the collection of all those points which are at equal distance from a given fixed point. So this is the basic definition. If someone asks you what is a circle, instead of showing this figure like moving your hand like this, you can now properly say that the circle is the collection of all those points which are at equal distance from a given fixed point. That's how we define the circle. Now, once we have understood what is the circle, we have the specific name for this fixed point also and to this fixed distance also. So this fixed point is known as the center. So the fixed point is called the center of circle. Center of circle. This is the fixed point. And generally, this fixed point, which is the center, it is represented by letter O. So we use capital O to represent this circle. So let me write this O here. So this fixed point that we have got, which is center, we say this is now. That's the general standard notification. So this is, and the fixed distance that we have, the fixed distance which we are talking about, this is called the radius. So the The fixed distance is called the radius of circle. Radius of circle. And it is represented by small. It is represented by letter small. These are the general notifications. So that means the distance that we have here. Let me also write that how can we define, how can we show it. This distance that we have, this is the small r. So if this is the small r, then definitely the other line that I have drawn, this will also be small. So what have I done here is I have placed this r, this radius r here. So this distance is radius r. This distance is also radius r. Small concept, but very important because when we will solve the question, you should be able to figure out when we have different figures, when we will be solving the questions in those figures, you should be clearly able to see where is the radius is that will be used to calculate or to find the areas. So that's the basic understanding you should have of a circle, center, and radius. I'm not emphasizing on it much. I'm sure you may have got the idea. If there is any doubt, you can go back and revise this. Now let's move on to the other concept that we have. So what are the other concepts? Now we will discuss chord of a circle. What do we mean by chord? So let me draw the circle first, and then we'll try to understand what is the chord. So now when I draw the circle, this is the circle. And let's take the center also. Let me take this point from here. Let me draw the point again. So we have the center. Let me try to get it. Okay. So this is the center. Try to align it. I think almost. So we have got our circle. Now let me again change the circle to the points. We can draw like this also to understand the definition of chord also. Let's again visualize the circle as the collection of points. So now I can take any 2 points on the circle, and if I join those 2 points, let's say one point is this, and I draw a line and join another point like this. If I join 2 points on the circle, the line which we get, this is known as a chord. So how do we define it? A line joining any 2 points on a circle is called the chord of circle. So whenever we draw any line segment which is joining any 2 points on the circle, we call it a chord of a circle. So this is the chord. Now we can have multiple chords. We can have infinite chords. Why? Because we have infinite points on the circle. See, I can join like this also. So this is also a chord. Now let's say if I take another line and maybe if I join like this, I join. See, if I leave line like this is not a chord. Why? Because it's only connecting one point on the circle, but this is not connecting any point. So you should be precise. You should be careful when you look at the figure. This is not a chord. These are chords because they are connecting 2 points. How can I make this a chord? I have to extend it and make sure that it joins any point on the circle. So as circle has infinite points, so we can write as circle has infinite points. Therefore, circle has infinite chords. So I hope you got the basic idea what is a chord. So chord is a line segment which joins 2 points on the circle. So generally it's a line segment because line is like it's infinite. It goes in both the directions infinite. So this line is actually a line segment. So this is a line segment that joins 2 points on the circle. So we'll say it's a line segment. Now once we have got the idea what is a chord, let's discuss the next topic, next concept, which is diameter of a circle. What do we mean by the diameter of a circle? Now the diameter of the circle is this is the longest chord of a circle is called diameter. We have one more definition of the diameter. We can also define the diameter as the chord that passes through the center. The chord that passes through the center is called diameter of diameter. I misspelled it. Let me correct it. It's diameter. So the chord that passes through the center is called the diameter of a circle. So let me just take the same figure here. Just copy this figure and let me place it. So now I'm just removing all these chords. Let's say, oh, okay, this is the chord here. Let's delete this. Now what am I doing is, now let's say if this is the chord, it passes from the center. So I have to make sure that it joins the 2 points. So the moment this chord passes from the center, this is a chord also, but now it has got a special name and we call it a diameter. Similarly, if I move like this and I'll extend it to make sure that it joins 2 points. So the moment this chord passes from the center, it gets a new name and the name is the diameter of a circle. And this is the longest chord. You can visualize, I think, why longest chord. See, any chord which is not passing from the center will definitely be smaller than the diameter. So that's why we say that diameter is the longest chord of the circle. Or you can also define that this is the chord, diameter is a chord that passes from the center. So for diameter also we have got the specific letter. So it is represented by letter. Now, in some books you may see capital D, or in some books we may say see small d also. So both are acceptable. So diameter can be represented by capital D also, or diameter can be represented by small d also. So that is what the diameter of a circle. Now, if you have understood the diameter of a circle from here, we can find a relation between diameter and the radius of a circle. So now let's discuss that relation. So what is the relation? Now next we want to understand the relation between radius and diameter of a circle. Now this is what you want to understand. I'm sure you may have got the idea by looking at the figure. Let me get the same figure here. See, this is the figure that we have. And we have got the same figure here. Now this is the figure. We have the circle, we have the diameter. Now let me remove one diameter. Let's just talk about one. See, if you will see here carefully, can I not say that from this center, let me represent it. This is capital, this is capital O. If you remember, let me represent this by capital O. So this is our center, and from center to the distance from this point, which is the fixed distance, we say this is the radius. That means I can write this as small r, which is the radius. And if this is the radius, then I think you can see that this is also the radius. So what is actually happening? Diameter is made up of, so from figure, if you see from figure, now see, let's see from figure, what we can see here. From figure, I can see that diameter, which is represented by D, equals to R plus R. See here in this figure, diameter is equal to R plus R. That means we can simply say that diameter is equal to twice of radius. This is the important relation that you should remember. Formula that we will be using many times depending on the question. So this is one important formula or the relation that you should remember. that diameter is equal to twice of radius. See, from the same formula, can I not find the radius also using the same formula? If we talk here, so I can also say that radius is equal to half of diameter. From the same formula, we can find that radius is equal to half of diameter, or diameter divided by 2. So depending on the question that what we have to find, because sometimes they will give us the diameter and we have to find the radius, and sometimes they will give us the radius and we have to find the diameter. So these two formulae can be used. Make sure you memorize these formulae, very important. Now once we have understood what is the diameter, what is the radius, now let's understand the circumference of a circle. Circumference of a circle. So circumference of a circle. Now, what do we mean by the circumference? So let me just take the same diagram here. This is the same diagram that we have. Now, circumference is the outer boundary that you see. Now, let me change this color so you get the better idea. Now, let's make it proper instead of, so we make it bold and we want the line proper curve. And let me change the color. Let's say this is in. So this red portion that you see here, the outer boundary, this is known as the circumference. Sometimes you may find the word perimeter also. So the outer boundary, so the length of outer boundary, outer boundary of circle, so the length of the outer boundary of circle is called the circumference or perimeter. Or perimeter of. So this total outer portion that we have that you see in the red, this is known as the circumference or the perimeter of the circle. So we have the formula to calculate the circumference or the perimeter of the circle also. So make sure we remember the formula. So what is the formula? The formula to calculate the circumference is equal to pi into d. Pi into d. This is the formula that you should remember, that pi into d means diameter. Now, in all the questions, they may not give us the diameter. So we can change this formula with radius also. D can be written as 2r. So this can be 2 pi r. So remember the formula in both the format, that the circumference of circle can be calculated either by using the formula pi into d. This will be applicable if diameter is given, or we can use 2 pi r. This is applicable when radius is given. So depending on the question, depending on the situation, what information is provided, we'll use to calculate the circumference of circle. This is the. Now when we have got the idea about what is circumference, what is radius, what is diameter, now let's move on to the next term, which is the segment of a circle. Segment of a circle. So what do we mean by the segment of a circle? So let me draw the circle again. Here, copy this and let's paste it here. So now when I paste it, let me shift it here. So now you want to understand what is the segment. So now what am I doing is I'm just changing this diameter and making a chord. Diameter is also a chord. So what am I doing is the portion that I make like this. So a chord divides the circle into segments. So that means when I draw the chord, let me just this also. So when I draw this chord, now we see that we have two parts in the circle. One is the smaller part, this one, and other is this part, the big part that we have. So these two parts are called the segments. So what happens is a chord divides the circle in two segments. Segment. That means the part that we are getting once we draw the chord, these parts are called the segment. Now see, what are these two segments? One is called as the minor segment, and second is called the major segment. Minor means small part, major means big part. So I think you can clearly see here that we have this small part, small portion available here. So this is the smaller part, so this is the minor, and this is the big part here, so this is called the major segment. So minor segment and major segment. Now we will get the question where they say calculate the area of segment. Now, if they are using the word calculate the area of segment and not specifying whether it's minor or major, by default we'll consider that it's a minor segment. How do we calculate the area of minor segment or major segment? That we'll discuss in the next videos. Right now, we are just understanding the terminologies. What are the different terminologies that we have? So I hope you have got the idea what is the segment here. See, diameter also divides the circle into semicircle. So semicircle is also a segment. Now let's see the next part, which is the sector of a circle. So now you want to understand what is sector of a circle. So let me take the same diagram here. Let's say this is the diagram and I shift it here. Now this time instead of chord, I am making radius, two radius. This is one radius and then I am making one more, something like this. So radius is singular and when we have more than one, we call them radii. So understand this also. Radius is singular, like in English we have singular and plural. More than one, singular is one. So when we have only one radius, one this length, fixed distance, we call this radius. But when we have more than one, that means plural, multiple, then we call it radii. This is the radii. So remember this, radius and radii. So which is the portion? So the part that you see between the radius and the arc, this is the part that we see. So the portion between two radii and corresponding arc is called the sector of a circle. Sector of a circle. So corresponding part means if you see this is one radius, this is second, so two radii, and this is the corresponding arc. So this is the portion that you see. This is called the sector. Now, if you will notice, we are getting here two parts again. See, if I am talking about this arc, then we have got this sector, but I can take this also. This is the bigger arc that we have. So this is the arc, then we have got major sector. So that means sector can also be of two types. One is minor sector and second is major sector. So like we have minor segment and major segment, we have got the minor sector and major sector also. So these are the basic terminologies that you should know before we get into solving the actual question. Let me quickly revise what we discussed till now. So we have started our concept with what is circle. So circle is the collection of points which are at equal distance from a fixed point. This fixed point is called as center. We represented it by O, and the fixed distance is called the radius, and we represent it by small r. After understanding of center, radius, and circle, we discuss what is a chord. So chord is a line segment. This is a line segment. What is happening? It's joining any two points on the boundary of this circle. And what is the diameter of a circle? Diameter is the chord that passes from the center. So the chord that passes from the center This is the diameter. So the chord that passes from the center, or this is the longest chord, it is called as the diameter. And to represent the diameter, we use either capital D or small d. After discussing this, we discussed what is relation between radius and diameter. So if you look at the figure, we clearly understand that diameter is made up of two radii. So we can say that diameter is equal to twice of radius. Or if you have to calculate radius, we can say diameter divided by 2. So this is again, as I say, the basic understanding of the diameter and the radius, the relation between the diameter and radius. You should memorize this formula because we will be using it to solve the question. Diameter is equal to twice of radius and radius is half of. After discussing this, we discussed about the circumference of circle, which is this red part, that means the outer boundary. The complete length of this outer boundary is known as the circumference or the perimeter. For circumference also we discussed two formulae. This is the one formula which is pi into d. D stands for diameter. And sometimes this d can be written as 2r. So this becomes 2 pi r. So depending on the question, we'll use any of these formulae. And after the discussion, we discussed about what is the segment of a circle. So segment of a circle is a chord is dividing the circle in two parts. So chord and this corresponding arc. Whatever portion that we see here, this portion is known as the segment. The small one is called the minor segment and the big one is called the major segment. And after that, we discussed about the sector of a circle. So what is sector of a circle? Sector of a circle is the part or the portion that we see between the two radii and the corresponding arc. This portion is known as the sector. Small part is minor sector or minor sector, and the big part is the major sector. So this was the basic terminologies. In next video, we'll start solving the question and see how can we solve. All right. If you have any doubt, do let me know.